My name is Corey Gil-Shuster. I'm Canadian originally. I've lived in Israel for over 20 years. I am the director of the International MA in Conflict Resolution and Mediation, and I've been in this position since 2014.
Okay. Now, for over a decade, you have been working on the Ask project on YouTube, talking to Palestinians and Israelis on the street. You have amassed millions of views and thousands of followers. What inspired you to start this project, and have you found any challenges along the way?
You can't just ask one person in Tel Aviv because that's a bit biased. You got to ask people all over the country. And the idea popped in my head, and I thought, I'm going to do this. 50% of people say no. They don't know what I'm asking. They have no idea, but they just don't like the idea of being on social media. And then sometimes hearing the answers. Sometimes the answers are difficult to hear being here, both on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side. But everything that I film is included, everything.
Having done this for years, can you share with us what you think are the common misconceptions that Palestinians have about Israel and Israelis, and vice versa?
So, okay, I'll start with Palestinians. Palestinians, they frame this conflict that Jews are all foreigners. None of them have any actual linkage to this land because Judaism is a religion. So they converted in the last couple of hundred years. They were not originally from here. They come from all places, Poland, America, Russia. That's how they frame it, even though the majority of Israelis are actually from the Arab world, but set that aside. None of them are indigenous. It is a colonization process by Europeans to take over Arab Islamic land. And one day the Jews are going to have to leave, period. That is the way it is. Within Palestinian society, you are getting all of your information from, first, I guess, from your teachers in school, which is very biased, then from social media and the regular media, like Al Jazeera. And it is very, very biased and very obviously anti-Israel. On the Israeli side, actually, Israelis understand Palestinians better than I would expect. A lot of it is more projection or more what they've been told, and they don't actually know any Palestinians, but they're not as far off as you could expect. I would say that the right wing their analysis of Palestinians is better than the left, which is a problem. There's a lot of misunderstandings because most Israelis do not know any Palestinians they don't come into contact with Palestinians. The most you might come into contact with a Palestinian as an Israeli is a Palestinian worker who doesn't speak Hebrew, doesn't speak English. Very few Israelis speak Arabic. So you are getting your information by seeing Arab workers and what you read on the news. That's it. So there's no communication between the two sides at all.
So after decades of asking these questions, what were you convinced that Israelis and Palestinians wanted the most prior to the massacre and events of October 7th?
On the Israeli side, some wanted peace, some want quiet. They don't really care if there's peace or not. And some want control, or most want control of the land so they feel safe. I am sure, and I haven't asked, but I am 100% sure that has increased exponentially. That idea of we have no one to talk to on the other side, meaning we have no one to talk to on the Palestinian side. You cannot negotiate with them. The only way we're ever going to feel secure is if we control. I'm sure that's what's going on. For Palestinians, they see this as colonialism, as the Jews came from Europe. Even though most Israelis are actually of Middle Eastern heritage. And their job is to eventually that the Jews will go back to Europe, and then they will have all of Palestine. For the majority, of course, I did find Palestinians who did believe in some form of coexistence, whether in a two-state solution or they just didn't know what, of somehow seeing a benefit of Israel being in the region. Or they maybe knew some Israelis somehow, which is rare. But there were a few voices that I heard absolutely that believed in we can somehow find a way to live with the Jews. It's just very difficult.
Now, how have the massacre and events of October 7th changed your perception on this? And has your work here at Tau, which revolves around mediation and conflict resolution, been impacted in any way?
So yeah, emotionally, I was one of those people who was watching the raw footage from Hamas of the killings of Israeli civilians, and for the purpose that I started, and I knew this would happen. There were people on the pro-Palestinian side who would deny that this ever happened, and I needed to be prepared for that. And of course, from day one, I started hearing this, and so I was collecting videos. This sounds awful. I'm not even going to say what I was collecting videos of. It's so horrendous, and trying to send them to people to say, look, this is happening. You can also tell me what's happening in Gaza is terrible, or what's happened in the past is terrible. Fine, legitimate. I don't have an issue with that. But don't deny barbaric events. This happened. These people used their hands to kill people, which is primitive and animalistic. So that's emotional me. And emotional me actually is going to have a very hard time interviewing Palestinians again. Because, okay, I will say this. On October 7th, I was getting notifications, Facebook messages from Palestinians saying, this is happening. And they would send me the raw videos of Hamas. And I said, no, this must be Syria. This cannot be happening. This is in the morning. So I didn't believe it was true. And in the videos, there's likes and hearts from Palestinians saying, look, we're killing Jews. Look what we're doing. Look, this is great. Now, my friends obviously didn't say this, but this is, I wouldn't say it's entirely mainstream, but it's somewhat mainstream in Palestinian society because I've seen it before. That's going to be hard for me to go back to Palestinians and not know what their stand is on this and to look at this objectively. Okay, that's emotional me. Rational me knows that in situations of conflict, people act in horrible, ugly, emotional ways. And they say things and they do things which are awful. We've all done it. We've all done it in some conflict situation. I don't mean just Israel-Palestine. I mean even between people, we've all done really awful things at some point. So I have to remind myself of all the theory that I've learned about conflict, why people get themselves into situations of conflict, how it affects us emotionally, and kind of what I do is I take a step back. And one of the tricks that I found out, it wasn't intentional, but because I'm behind a camera in the West Bank or with Israelis, doesn't matter, and they say something which I find so awful, I always look in the screen to make sure, are they centered? And just me taking myself out of that emotional moment helps put it into perspective of, okay, I can analyze this from an objective stance, from all the training I've had in social psychological approaches to conflict and political approaches to conflict, how people perceive conflict, why they're saying these things. So I emotionally or I intellectually take myself out of the emotions. So I will approach this as much as possible from an analytical point of view of trying to understand Palestinians and Israelis and where they're coming from and always asking why. Okay, you feel this way. Why do you feel this way? What is it linked to? Can I find something human behind it that shows how this person was led to this conclusion? That's what I'm hoping to do.
Now, this conflict in particular garners a lot of attention in the West, in the media, and even international institutions.
Strangely, yes, I do not understand it, yes.
And it's also unlike most other conflicts in various areas of the world because they don't get as much attention. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think most Westerners can grasp the true nature of the conflict or at least have the right intentions as they attempt to discuss the conflict?
No, I don't want to stop people from looking at the conflict or understanding the conflict and say, but until you experience something on both sides, I'm not just saying, on the Israeli side with rockets or what happened on October 7th, but also to be in a Palestinian area when the army has a raid to arrest somebody and how people react. Until you see it with your own eyes, it's very difficult to understand all the different nuances of what's going on. And of course, we all step into it with our own prejudices and ideas, and that will project on what we see. So, but I think everybody should, not even if they can, everybody should come here. This is something that annoys me about the West, that everybody has an opinion about this conflict, or most people have an opinion about this conflict, and none of them have been here. Now, they all go out and they buy new couches every couple of years, and they buy art for their walls, and they go on vacations to somewhere local because they don't travel internationally usually. You can easily come here, easily. It is not that expensive. It's, even though Israel is an expensive country, it's not that expensive. Just come here and see it for yourself. And I always tell people, whichever side you're on, you love Israel, you love Palestine, go live with the opposite. Spend 2 weeks and shut up and listen. Now, you can say what you want, you can criticize them. I think that's legitimate and fine. But at least you'll know what you're talking about. You'll see the nuances and of how things happen. And not everything is easily summarized in a 2-minute article on the news or in a YouTube video, or accusing. I'm saying this about my own videos as well. You cannot understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or any conflict in the world through watching a couple of videos, reading a couple of Haaretz articles, watching the news, BBC or any of them. Doesn't matter. You have to experience something for yourself. Somehow, people on both sides have to agree that we're going to find solutions to all these problems. And that, of course, you don't hear, because everyone takes a side and thinks it's the other side entirely who's to blame. I hope once this ends that people can start being rational again. And my hope is actually that the Arab world will force both sides to negotiate some sort of solution, whatever that is. Anything that both sides could agree on. I don't know if there is anything both sides could agree on. I don't think there is. But let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm usually wrong about a lot of these things, so I'm hoping.